The summer sun beat down relentlessly as I reluctantly packed my bags for a week-long family vacation at a seaside cottage. The invitation from my parents had come as a surprise, and I found myself caught between the desire to escape my mundane work routine and the apprehension of spending extended time with my family. The deciding factor, however, was the knowledge that my sister Sarah had already committed to joining us. It had been far too long since we'd last seen each other, and the prospect of reconnecting with her outweighed my reservations. As I zipped up my suitcase, I couldn't help but reflect on the distance that had grown between Sarah and me since she'd left for university. Our once close relationship had dwindled to sporadic text messages and the occasional social media interaction. The thought of calling her crossed my mind from time to time, but the realization that I'd need to go through our mother to get her current number always made me postpone the effort. The drive to the cottage was long and uneventful. I spent most of it lost in thought, wondering how much Sarah might have changed during our time apart. As we pulled up to the quaint beachside property, I felt a mix of anticipation and nervousness settle in my stomach. The first day at the cottage passed without Sarah's arrival. I tried to distract myself by exploring the nearby beach, feeling the warm sand between my toes and the salty breeze on my skin. As I lay on the sand, eyes closed and arms crossed over my chest, I had to admit that the change of scenery was pleasant. The sun's warmth seeped into my skin, a stark contrast to the air-conditioned office I'd grown accustomed to. I must have dozed off because the next thing I knew, a familiar voice jolted me awake. Sarah had arrived, announcing her presence with a string of colorful expletives as she stumbled over a rock. I kept my eyes closed, listening to her approach and feeling a smile tug at my lips. Some things, it seemed, never changed. As Sarah plopped down beside me, complaining about the lone rock on an otherwise pristine beach, I couldn't help but fall back into our old patterns of playful banter. We exchanged quips about her girly feet and her lack of foresight in going barefoot on a beach. It felt good, familiar, like slipping into a favorite old sweater. When I finally opened my eyes and looked at my sister, I was struck by how much she had changed. The gangly teenager I remembered had blossomed into a beautiful young woman. Her features had matured, her confidence had grown, and I found myself staring a moment too long before I caught myself. Our conversation drifted to catch up on our lives. Sarah asked about Emma, my ex-girlfriend, unaware that we had broken up. I winced internally, realizing I hadn't told our parents about the split to avoid my mother's well-intentioned but misguided matchmaking efforts. As I explained the situation to Sarah, I was grateful for her understanding and support. The topic of relationships led to a moment of introspection. I'd never had trouble attracting girls, but maintaining long-term relationships had always been a challenge for me. It struck me that Sarah was one of the few people I could truly be myself around, without the pressure of trying to be constantly agreeable. Our conversation was cut short when Sarah announced her intention to go for a swim. As she stood and removed her shirt, I was caught off guard by the revealing blue bikini she wore underneath. My eyes lingered longer than they should have, and I found myself making a sarcastic comment about her choice of swimwear to mask my discomfort. Sarah's retort was quick and dismissive, but there was something in her eyes that made me wonder if she had chosen the bikini with a specific purpose in mind. I pushed the thought away, chastising myself for even considering such a thing. As Sarah made her way into the water, I found myself following her, partly to cool off and partly because I didn't want our time together to end just yet. The water was refreshingly cool against my sun-warmed skin, and for a moment, I forgot about the confusing thoughts that had been swirling in my mind. Sarah swam out deeper before turning back towards me, her wet hair slicked back and her skin glistening in the sunlight. As she commented on how nice the water felt, I found myself struggling to maintain eye contact, my gaze drawn to the curves of her body beneath the surface. Feeling a rush of heat that had nothing to do with the sun, I abruptly turned and headed back to shore. Sarah called after me, confusion and a hint of hurt in her voice. I paused, trying to gather my thoughts and explain my sudden retreat without revealing the inappropriate thoughts that had spurred it. When Sarah caught up to me, her proximity only intensified my inner turmoil. She mistook my discomfort for anger, and I found myself reassuring her that she had done nothing wrong. It was then that Sarah made a confession that shook me to my core. In a soft voice, she admitted that she had chosen the bikini hoping to elicit a reaction from me. She spoke of noticing my physique, a feeling conflicted about her attraction to her own brother. Her words simultaneously relieved and terrified me, as I realized that the confusing feelings I'd been experiencing were not one-sided. The tension between us was palpable as we stood there on the beach, the waves lapping at our feet and the sun beating down on our shoulders. I struggled to find the right words to respond, torn between the taboo nature of our mutual attraction and the undeniable pull I felt toward her. In a moment of levity, I made a joke about us both being weirdos, which broke the tension and led to a playful physical interaction. As Sarah sat on my stomach, knocking the wind out of me, I was acutely aware of every point of contact between our bodies. Our banter continued, a familiar dance of words that now carried new undertones. When Sarah shifted her position, I found myself having to suggest that she move away, my body betraying my attempts at maintaining a brotherly demeanor. As we made our way back to the cottage, an unspoken agreement seemed to hang in the air between us. We both knew that something had fundamentally changed in our relationship, but neither of us was ready to fully confront what that meant. The rest of the day passed in a blur of family activities and stolen glances. Our parents, oblivious to the undercurrent of tension between their children, chatted happily about their plans for the week ahead. Sarah and I played our parts, engaging in conversation and joining in on games, all while hyper-aware of each other's presence. As night fell and we retired to our separate rooms, I found myself unable to sleep. My mind raced with thoughts of Sarah, replaying our interactions on the beach and imagining scenarios that both excited and terrified me. I tossed and turned, the warm summer night doing nothing to cool the heat that seemed to radiate from within me. After hours of restless attempts at sleep, I made a decision that would irrevocably change the course of our relationship. With my heart pounding in my chest, I quietly made my way to Sarah's room, hovering outside her door as I wrestled with my conscience. As I stood outside Sarah's door, my hand poised to knock, I was acutely aware of the line I was about to cross. The soft sound of her breathing from within the room seemed to echo in the quiet hallway. After a moment's hesitation, I gently turned the doorknob, finding it unlocked. "Sarah?" I whispered, pushing the door open slightly. "Are you awake?" The lack of response made me pause. The moonlight streaming through her window illuminated her sleeping form, her dark hair splayed across the pillow. I knew I should turn back, that watching her sleep like this was a violation of her privacy. Yet, I found myself drawn to her bedside, unable to tear my gaze away. Minutes passed as I stood there, grappling with my conflicting emotions. The desire to be close to her warred with the voice of reason in my head, telling me to leave. In the end, desire won out. I carefully lowered myself onto the bed beside her, telling myself that just lying next to her wouldn't be so bad. As soon as I settled, Sarah's voice broke the silence. "Have you been awake this whole time?" My heart nearly stopped. "Damn it, Sarah. You scared me." She turned to face me, a mischievous glint in her eye. "I wanted to see what you'd do if you thought I was asleep. Obviously, nothing interesting." I defended myself, insisting I wouldn't have done anything while she was sleeping. Her next question, however, caught me off guard. "How about now that you know I'm awake?" The implications of her question hung heavy in the air between us. I struggled to form a coherent response, my mind racing with the possibilities her words presented. I don't know," I finally admitted. Sarah's hand found mine in the darkness, her touch sending shivers down my spine. "Do you feel it?" she whispered. "Do you feel what you're doing to me?" I nodded, unable to form words. The tension between us had reached a breaking point, and in that moment, all the reasons why we shouldn't do this seemed to fade away. Our lips met in a kiss that was both tender and passionate, years of repressed feelings pouring out in a single moment. What followed was a night of exploration and discovery, as we mapped out each other's bodies with curious hands and eager lips. The taboo nature of our actions only seemed to heighten the intensity of our passion. In the back of my mind, I knew we would have to face the consequences of this night, but in the moment, nothing else mattered but Sarah. As the first light of dawn began to filter through the window, we lay tangled in each other's arms, our breathing slowly returning to normal. Sarah's head rested on my chest, her hair tickling my skin. The reality of what we had done began to sink in, bringing with it a wave of conflicting emotions. "Sarah," I began, my voice hoarse.
"We need to talk about this."
She propped herself up on an elbow, her eyes meeting mine. "I know," she said softly, "but can we just have this moment a little longer?" I nodded, pulling her closer. We lay in silence, each lost in our own thoughts about what the future held for us now. When we finally did talk, it was a conversation filled with raw honesty and vulnerable admissions. We spoke of the attraction we'd felt for years, the shame and confusion that came with those feelings, and the fear of what this would mean for our relationship and our family. "I'm on birth control," Sarah admitted, addressing one of the immediate concerns. "I've been taking it for a while now." The practical nature of her statement brought a small smile to my face, despite the gravity of our situation. "Always prepared, aren't you?" She playfully swatted my arm, but her expression quickly turned serious again. "What are we going to do?" It was a question without an easy answer. We both knew that what had happened between us was socially unacceptable, illegal even. Yet the depth of our feelings couldn't be denied. "I don't know," I admitted, "but I do know that I don't want to lose you." "Not again." Sarah's eyes welled up with tears. "I don't want to lose you either, but how can we possibly make this work?" We spent the next few hours discussing our options, weighing the risks and consequences of pursuing a relationship versus trying to go back to being just siblings. Neither choice was without its challenges. As the sounds of our parents stirring in the kitchen below reached us, we knew our time alone was coming to an end. Sarah quickly got dressed and left to take a shower, while I snuck back to my room, my mind still reeling from the events of the night. The rest of the vacation passed in a blur of stolen moments and secretive glances. To our parents, we appear to have simply rekindled our sibling bond, spending more time together and engaging in playful banter. But beneath the surface, a current of tension and desire ran between us. On our last night at the cottage, as our parents retired early to prepare for the drive home the next day, Sarah and I found ourselves alone on beach. The moon hung low over the water, casting a silvery path across the waves. "I don't want this week to end," Sarah said softly, her hand finding mine in the sand. I squeezed her hand gently. "Me neither. But we can't hide away here forever." She leaned her head on my shoulder, a gesture that could appear innocent to any onlookers, but held so much more meaning for us. What happens when we go back to our real lives? It was a question we'd both been avoiding. The bubble of our vacation was about to burst, forcing us to confront the reality of our situation. "We stay in touch," I said firmly. "No more letting months go by without talking. We figure this out together, day by day." Sarah nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. "Promise? Promise?" I replied, sealing it with a quick kiss. As we sat there on the beach, the future uncertain but full of possibility, I realized that regardless of what happened next, this week had changed us both irrevocably. The bond between us, always strong but now forged anew in the fires of passion and shared secrets, would endure whatever challenges lay ahead. The drive home the next day was filled with a mixture of sadness at leaving our secluded paradise and anticipation for what the future held. Sarah and I exchanged phone numbers directly this time, no longer needing to go through our mother as an intermediary. In the weeks and months that followed, we navigated the complexities of our new relationship. There were moments of doubt, times when the guilt and fear threatened to overwhelm us. But there were also moments of pure joy, of connections so deep it took our breath away. We learned to balance our romantic feelings with the sibling bond we'd always shared, creating a unique relationship that defied easy categorization. It wasn't always easy, and we knew that if our secret ever came to light, we would face judgment and potentially lose everything. But as we lay together one night, almost a year after that fateful vacation, I knew that whatever happened, I wouldn't change a thing. Sarah had become not just my sister and my lover, but my best friend, my confidant, and my partner in every sense of the word. As I drifted off to sleep, Sarah's warmth beside me a comforting presence. I thought about how a reluctant agreement to a family vacation had led to the most profound and unexpected journey of my life. It wasn't conventional, it wasn't always easy, but it was ours. And in the end, that was all that mattered.